Hey, what's up, everyone? It's been a bit once again. Today, I actually wanted to take a video to kind of stress something that I feel is rather important, and this doesn't just relate to our situation when it comes to what's been going on with Koban. It actually has to do with virtually any situation similar to this one. You see, a lot of the time when it's a he said, she said kind of situation, you tend to have people who will walk into these things and they only get one side of the story. And a lot of the time when you only get one side of the story, if you're not almost immediately given the other side, you might be coerced, or rather forced, to only believe what you've learned. And it's in my best interest personally to always get the full story, because there's always two sides to a story, and obviously to understand the full picture and to better educate yourself on something, you do need to take the time. You do need to set aside the time to educate yourself and to learn about everything. And the reason why I'm saying that is because obviously if you're someone who was on Twitter, right, you might have known the whole allegation situation that was going on with Koban, and that to me, it still seems a little bit in the air on what's really going down with that. But granted, my point in bringing this up is a lot of people were exposed to that situation with only one side of the story. They did not get the full side. And obviously, there was a good deal of time, a good period of time where there was no other side. As in, it wasn't vocalized, it wasn't given, at least not to the extent that it would have been required to. So because of that, most people would likely just run with what they had and not really bother to look elsewhere, because maybe there was nowhere else to look. But at this point, there is now both sides of the story. And I want to make it clear that not just with this situation, but with virtually any situation like this one, it's always important to be patient, because patience is key, honestly, in life, period. But you need to take the time to be patient and wait for more information to come, or rather continuously search for said information before you draw your conclusions, because a lot of times we do make assumptions based on what information we have, and again, if we don't have the full picture, we might be led to these assumptions almost instinctually, almost naturally, and it comes to a point where we assume something, and then when the full story comes out, now we look silly because turns out it wasn't so cut and dry. It wasn't black and white. There might be a little bit of gray in this situation, right? So that's part one right there. I say this to say that always be sure to educate yourself on something, just in general, before you draw a conclusion, make an assumption, period. Because you might learn that there's a bit more to a story than meets the eye, and even though it might not have come right away, once that information was out there for everyone to see, now you might come to realize, wait, I said X, Y, and Z, and maybe I shouldn't have, because I didn't know yet. I didn't know for sure. I wasn't fully aware, and because of that, maybe it was too soon for me to jump to this statement, if you will. It's just a generalized thing, just any situation, period. That's my advice. Now, my second piece of advice is actually, I'd argue, more important, and it's this. When it comes to a situation where you're dealing with someone, or rather trying to support someone is better worded, when you're trying to support someone who is in an especially difficult position, a rather dark place, if you will, what it comes down to is, with this situation in particular, the one that we, the Cobanermites, have been a part of, right? At least those of us that have kept up with it and are fully aware and have educated ourselves, I want to also advise this, that you do your best to learn from this situation. I know that it's probably been very stressful, traumatizing, painful. I understand you. I hear you on that. Personally, I've been through this kind of situation my whole life, even actually been in this position myself, as in the position that our pal Koban is in, or rather has been in. And I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be on the outside looking in. I know what it's like to be the person who is right beside the one who is in that tough spot, and I know what it's like to be in that tough spot. And if this is your first time experiencing something like this, it's actually important that to some degree that you do, because you might be able to take away things from this and learn things, especially when it comes to your choices during that time. So that way you might be better equipped the next time it hypothetically happens again. So what I'm getting to is, for example, because these two communities are close, the Cobanermites and the Joy-Con boys, if you're a Joy-Con boy, you probably recall what happened with Des, with Etika. And I hate to invoke his name here, but it is relevant to this conversation. It's the fact that it was important, and he even said in his last video, to learn from his situation. And I want to stress that here, is that we should all learn from this situation as well. That it's not just, oh, we're meant to just feel sad and feel stressed the whole time, and that it's just all bad. And no, there's actually good that can come from bad. There's always a balance to it. For every negative, there's a positive. And I'm not saying that it's sunshine and rainbows, but what I am saying is that if we're going to do our best to make sure that things like this don't happen to just people in general, it's important that we learn. We always have to learn. Literally, from the time you were born, you were meant to learn. You will learn, and ergo, you will evolve as a person. So, I'm saying that to say that if you've educated yourself on what's happened here, with Coban's story, at least, take this time, or rather take the time moving forward to learn from everything that's happened, learn from choices, learn from how maybe some, and even just other individuals that have been involved in this situation. Learn from all of it. Take what's been said, maybe good decisions that some people made, maybe bad decisions that others made. There's always ways to learn from this, so that way you know how to better conduct yourself when the time comes and perhaps you face something like this again. Because it can happen. It's going to be unexpected. You're probably going to still perhaps react in a dramatic fashion, perhaps, but ideally, if you take away enough from this experience, you might be better equipped regardless to then handle it and treat it with the proper respect that you need to. Because when it comes to supporting someone in this position, one thing that you don't do, right, is you don't necessarily demand things of them. And I point that out because I know that there are some who may be coming in the situation late, right? And maybe they're just a really big fan and a supporter, which is great. But they might ask, yo, man, I miss you. Come back to YouTube. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be demanding that. You see, ironically, by asking for that thing that you really want, because obviously that's not even just about come back to YouTube. It's just the fact of, oh, I miss you, man. It's been a long time, right? The problem is that a big part of this difficult time, it actually stemmed from him being on YouTube, right? And I'm trying to relate this not just to him, but just other people in general. Let's say that there's something that cause someone to take a step back and step away from everybody else, right? So maybe they've just been AFK, right? They've been gone for a bit. It's not the best idea to then ask said person to return to said thing that perhaps made them walk away, if that makes sense. And another thing, there are those that maybe would ask for updates. Or like, where's the update, man? Or haven't heard from you in a while. Where's the update? Obviously you care. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously you have enough care to want to know what's going on. You know, has there been any improvements? Has there been any progress made? What's up? You care. That's a good thing. However, if you've seen enough people doing it consistently and perhaps maybe they haven't gotten a reply, it's probably not the best idea to keep on asking over and over and over and over and over again. But in this case, right, we're online, and this isn't like we're a group of friends that know each other IRL and things like that. You know what I mean? It's a different situation, but even still, you don't want to keep constantly adding to that and keep on asking and asking and asking. You got to be patient. In Coban's case, the one thing that he deserved more than anything was patience, and he didn't get that from a lot of people. And because of that, it obviously made things very difficult for him. And for anyone, without giving everybody the patience that they need. In other words, think of it like school, right? Some people are placed in a certain class because they work at a certain pace, right? And they need to be able to function in an environment that will cater to that pacing that the work ethic that they have, right? That they're able to output. So it's the same thing here. We have to be patient with him. We have to be patient with people in general who are in these situations, because if we are constantly hounding them, constantly coming to them saying, yo, tell me this, tell me that, do this, do that, it's like more fuel to the fire. It's like more pressure. And that's not something that ideally we'd want to do. We don't want to make anyone feel pressured in that way. So we definitely should not do that with him. Again, and it's not that you're doing anything necessarily wrong. At least I know your intentions would not be, oh, I'm trying to pressure. No, you just care. But sometimes you just have to be patient. And that's something that I've stressed throughout this situation, is that we all have to be patient. We don't want to jump the gun on anything. We don't want to make assumptions. And above all else, we got to be patient. So another piece of advice is, and I've seen it, and I do want to point it out, that depending on what you want to say, and this is this is pertaining to commenting, right? At this point, I've seen the support. It's there, and I'm glad that so many of you are still trying to check up on him. That's good, but that's not actually what I'm going to talk about here. It's actually about certain comments that might not necessarily help the situation either. And if anything, it's the kind of comments that we want to avoid. So there's one kind of comment that was kind of a reoccurring thing, and it's a bit, if you take a step back and you think about this kind of comment to make, rather, it probably isn't very helpful. And it's to say, let's just say, and obviously it's not that you're doing anything wrong inherently, but it's not necessarily helpful. But it's maybe leaving a comment saying, oh, has so-and-so passed away? Is so-and-so gone? I think he did it. I think he's gone. Blah, 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 blah. Things like those comments are not going to be helpful either. Imagine, just for a second, imagine putting yourself in the position of the person who's being checked on, and who's obviously a lot of people are worried about, right? So imagine you're coming on and you're seeing a bunch of comments like that, saying, oh, is he dead? Or, oh, I think he did it. Or he or she, whoever, right? It's a little bit, when you stop and think about it, it's probably not going to help. It's probably not the best thing to say. So you do want to be really careful with what you say. And again, this is stuff that applies to just any situation like this, period. You do want to be careful with how you word things. And if anything, if you are someone who has maybe slipped up and done some of these things that I've mentioned, don't feel bad about it. That's not the point. We are human. We are fundamentally made to make mistakes sometimes, because that is how we improve. We learn from those mistakes. We evolve as a person, and we become a better person. So if you have slipped up and done those things, to some degree, it's like I said earlier. There's always a positive to every negative, and in this case, the positive will be if you learn from that. And that way you know what not to do next time, and perhaps what to do the next time. And I've encouraged this enough, and I'll keep doing it, that if you want to maybe share your personal feelings on the matter with him, or you want to talk to him on this situation, and maybe just express your concern or your care or what have you, that's fine. But again, you really don't want to make those kind of comments. It's not very helpful. Admittedly, it's not. Now, the next thing that I want to address is this is pertaining to more so on the outside perspective of things, because I realize that it's a little bit difficult for many to avoid this kind of thing. So this is also very important. So bear with me if you're still with me. But there are obviously, again, two sides to every story, and when one side has been expressed, especially more than the other, if not entirely more than the other, then there may be those that will take that information and spread it in a certain manner. What I mean is that perhaps there are those who will take information and spread it in a negative manner. In other words, and to put it in a modern day term, gossiping, right? So to take information and to perhaps, again, keeping it modern, maybe make a video and spread out this information and perhaps to paint a picture, right? In these cases, obviously you become aware of that and then you might have a certain reaction to it. So now if I'm going to get really specific here, I understand that there are those that have definitely made perhaps videos on this situation and perhaps they have given a certain take on it that maybe you're not going to be a fan of or what have you. And maybe there are those who just in general have spread information that they perhaps received. And when it comes down to those of us who are educated on this whole case and have both sides, we might be able to see this person perhaps doesn't know everything. This person perhaps has not been fully updated on everything. And that's why they said what they said. And that's something to always keep in mind is not everybody knows everything. That's an obvious, that's a given, but it's something that we actually sometimes need to remind ourselves that not everybody knows everything. So when I say that is because it's not good to jump the gun, again, jump the gun, and then attack this person or express rage and frustration and what have you. It's not even good to give any energy to that. Like I said, I'm aware that there's people out there who are perhaps spreading a negative energy out there pertaining to this situation, but I couldn't name any of them because I don't actively seek those people. I do not actively seek out the negativity, the hate, if you will, that might exist out there, at least on the internet. So I advise you heavily to, number one, not actively seek it out. Don't look for it because obviously you're going to have a certain reaction. You might be aware of that you're going to be upset. So don't do it. Don't look for it. And if it happens upon your doorstep, there's honestly no pressure to even click on these kinds of videos because at the end of the day, you have to make the choice to click on those kind of videos. And perhaps just judging by whatever is the initial introduction to that, in other words, a title, a thumbnail, whatever, it should tell you enough. Most times. Obviously, you don't want to assume, again. But the point is that don't put your energy into the negative of the situation. Yes, there is a lot of negative around this situation. I'm aware of that, as well as probably the rest of us. But don't put your energy into it. Don't feed into that. It's not going to help. In fact, it will probably make things worse. It's better to focus your energy on where the positives are. And if anything, the focus in the first place should be more on the person in question rather than the people who are obviously commentating. I've said this before, and I honestly want to say it now with my own words, but I recognize that this situation is about far more than myself. I recognize that this is not even just about necessarily Coban himself either. It's really about all of us, because he's not the only one that struggled. All of us, in our own ways, have struggled in life. And if anything, that is to some degree a part of life, is struggle. And again, I've seen the comments. I've seen what a lot of you have said. You've shared your stories, and there's some really powerful stories where some of you have expressed struggles in your life. I see strength because you've risen above those struggles, and you're still here despite those struggles. So that is the definition of inspiration to me. But that's besides the point. What it comes down to is that our focus should be on what really counts. So, for example, supporting our pal Coban, in our case, that's where our focus should go. It should not be so spread so thin to any negativity being spread or what have you. It shouldn't be. Ideally, it shouldn't be. Obviously, there are those who will spread misinformation, and that's a bit inevitable. It's going to happen. And like I've mentioned, some people are just not fully informed, and they may come off as ignorant because of it. But the bottom line is that if you are someone who cares enough about a situation, you will likely take the time out of your own free will, without anyone having to coerce you. You will take the time to educate yourself on your own time. And nobody will have to ask you. Because I'm not going to ask anybody to do that. I believe that if it's what you really are invested in, if there's something that you truly care about, you're going to do it without anyone having to say anything. So enough said on that. But, again, to those that do not educate themselves, do not waste your energy on them. Don't. It's up to them to learn and to grasp the full picture. And if they don't, they don't. But, no matter what, eventually, the truth will reveal itself. All the information will be out there. And in our case, there is two sides of this story. That's why, again, we always gotta be patient. So, what this all comes down to is this. That my advice is to simply learn from this. Learn from this situation. Don't just take this situation and leave it as something that has simply been a traumatic time or what have you. Because I realize, again, that a lot of you have definitely been concerned and worried, and I hear you. I'm here for you, if anything. But don't let it tear you down. Let this be something to learn from so that it can build you up. So that you'll be better suited and prepared for when a situation like this comes up in the future. Because it can. It could be your best friend. It could be a family member. It could be someone you don't even know. And no matter what it is, no matter what the case is, it's ideal to have the knowledge and to have the perspective on what to do in those cases so that you're not just shivering and shaking in fear or staying up late and missing out on sleep because you just don't know what to do. Well, I would hope that by the end of this situation, most, if not all of you, will then know what to do. Because if more of us know what to do, we can better and hopefully, ideally, prevent these situations from ending in a bad result. If you understand what I mean. I'm sure it's a little obvious. So, I hope that if you've listened up to this point, that you've taken this information that I've put out there, and I hope that you only take positives from it. That's ideally what I would like to do here, is just give my advice. So, that being said, I hope you guys are all taking care of yourselves, both mentally and physically. I truly hope that you all are staying safe, no matter where you live or where you go. And more than anything, I just hope you have a darn good one. So, until next time, and as always, peace, Cobanermites.